Hey, it's Deltia and Shepard here to provide you another video on the Sorc class guide. This time we're going to cover skills. I'm going to show you what each skill looks like and the morphs that I chose based on the playstyle that I like. The Sorc is interesting. It has some of the best but also some of the worst abilities. So we're going to go over kind of every single thing, and the combinations with this class are really limitless. So let's get started. The first skill lineup is Daedric Summoning. This is probably my least favorite skill line out of all the Sorcs. I consider it also the weakest. It's basically the pet class. I don't really like playing with pets, and I don't see how they're very valuable in this game, so I try to stay away from this as much as possible, though there are a couple good abilities. Let's get to them. The first active ability is an ultimate, Summon Charge Atronach. This is pretty good. It summons an immobile Atronach, it shoots down a huge meteor, it looks pretty cool. The problem is it's not very mobile. It has limited range until you morph it, and it just doesn't seem that effective in comparison to the other ultimates the Sorc has. So I use this early on, but don't use it later in the game. The first ability that you get actively is Unstable Familiar. It's a toggled on and off summoning pet class ability. It reduces your max magicka, and I took the Volatile Familiar morph because it adds a stun at the end. There are some people that abuse this and cast it over and over again and turn it on and off to get the stun, but I consider that an exploit, so I don't do that. Otherwise, I would take Volatile Familiar if I was using a pet class. Next ability up is Daedric Curse. It's a 6-second ability that explodes and damages nearby enemies at the end of it. I took the Velocious Curse morph because it reduces the cooldown, and with a 3-second cast I can cast this, Mage's Fury, and Crystal Frags and watch an enemy explode. I don't use it for AoE, so the Explosive Curse morph isn't that valuable for me. Next up is Summon Winged Twilight. It's just a different type of summon Daedric creature that attacks nearby enemies and reduces your max magicka by 10%. Once again, I don't see the point. If I were going to take this, I would take the Summoning Restoring Twilight, which adds a magicka regeneration aura around, but I don't consider this very valuable considering 10% magic is a lot of DPS wasted, so I just stick with my skills. Next up is Bound Armor. It's a toggle on and off, again, armor buff, but reduces max magicka by 10%. I don't like the penalty, and I found way more effective ways to increase my armor rather than keeping one ability on my bar, like for instance the movable morph in the heavy armor skill tree line, and also lightning form I think is just better than this. If I were to take it, I'd do Bound Armaments, which increases heavy attack. I've tried to use this in combination with Overload, but didn't see too big of a benefit. Conjure Ward is the last active ability, and it's pretty valuable. It creates basically a damage bubble or a shield on yourself for 20 seconds. I like the Hardened Ward morph because it increases the shield strength on self, and if you have this in Critical Surge running, you can heal passively and really keep yourself up for quite a long time. I don't take Empowered Ward, the other morph, because I don't really play with pets, so if you do, maybe this would be good for you. The Dark Magic skill line is more of a utility and control rather than straight damage skill line. You'll have stuns, self heals, and some decent damage. I really like this skill line, especially the ultimate, as it becomes a PvP nightmare for anyone running around. The ultimate Negate Magic is an area dispel that can be placed in a radius 28 meters out. This is a PvP god mode and even really works well on PvE bosses. I take the Absorption Field morph, which restores health and magicka, because the Suppression Field doesn't seem that valuable to gain spell resistance, when really I use this defensively or offensively. So the morphs aren't really that good, but the spell in and of itself is powerful, so try this. Crystal Shards is the bread and butter of the Sorc range casting skill. It's a casted by default range damage dealer that stuns for 2 seconds. I take the Crystal Frags morph. Why? Because every spell that you cast has a chance to make Crystal Fragments proc instantly, or C-Frags. So you'll be casting stuff, all of a sudden you'll hear a little ding, Then you'll launch your crystal frags to get some self heals if you have the passives, and do it all over again. I consider this a must-use ability for the Sorc. Encase is the next ability up, and it's kind of like the poor man's Dragon Knight Talons. It immobilizes enemies in front of you for 4.5 seconds. I like the Shattering Prison morph because it deals damage when the spell ends and generates a decent amount of ultimate. Restraining Prison is also good, adds a snare when the ability ends, but I like the ultimate regeneration for Shattering Prisons. This is good if you're trying to kite or keep enemies in front of you as a caster. Good ability. Rune Prison is next up, and I have not found a use for this at all. It disorients targets for roughly 15 seconds, and really I find more abilities just better to use. I took the Weakening Prison morph, which deals the enemies take extra damage while disoriented, and I consider that the best option, though I really haven't found a strong use for this. Dark Exchange is a channel ability to exchange stamina for health and magicka. Yes, this is extremely overpowered. Once you take the Dark Deal morph, which I consider better, you'll be able to move while channeling. So you're the only class in the game that can channel and get magicka and health back for stamina. You have to use this ability. Daedric Mine summons 3 mines for 30 seconds, which arm over 3 seconds, and boom, explode to nearby enemies. I don't like this ability over Lightning Flood or Crystal Frags, though when I use Daedric Tomb, which arms the mines instantly, I did see some good decent damage. However, the magic cost is a lot, and I think other abilities like Crystal Frags are just too valuable to have this on my bar. The Storm Calling skill line is what I consider so far the best skill line of the game in any class. It has self-sustaining heals, massive speed, and huge area damage. And you can make a decent build just from these skills alone. Let's talk about them. Overload is that ability you've seen people running around looking like Emperor Palpatine. It turns your light and heavy attacks into empowered versions that drain ultimate. It's really interesting because Overload actually gives you a third bar. I reached out to Zos to see if this was an exploit or not, so I don't recommend doing that right now. I took the Energy Overload morph because it makes light and heavy attacks restore magicka. You put this on, and then also your critical surge, and you basically can heal to full. Next up is the Sorc's finisher, Mage's Fury. It's a 28 meter range attack cast that goes off once the enemy is below 20% health, and deals some area damage. The interesting thing about this is you can cast it prior to the enemy reaching 20% health, and then when it drops, boom, it goes off. I took the Mage's Wrath morph because the explosions deal more damage, though if I were soloing and leveling, I'd take Endless Fury for the extra magicka. Lightning Form is a buff that adds massive armor and spell resistance and does damage to nearby enemies. I love the Boundless Storm morph because it adds tons of speed. You can really feel this, and you have to cast it frequently, which could proc C-Frags. Thundering Presence increases duration, which is nice, but I consider Boundless Storms more important because you want to be casting spells all the time with Crystal Frags. Lightning Splash is the Sorc's ability that can have a synergy. It creates a small radius of lightning that does shock damage for roughly 3 seconds. A nearby ally may activate Conduit, which does good decent amount of damage. I take the Lightning Flood morph, which has increased radius, and you can really see the difference in the radius. Plus, your allies have a better chance to use that synergy. This adds a lot of DPS to the group, and I recommend taking this on one of your bars if you're grouping up constantly. Now we have Surge, which I think is the best ability in the game once you morph to Crit Surge. Surge by itself increases weapon damage for roughly 15 seconds. Not so cool. Crit Surge makes critical strikes heal you. This is amazing. You can run in with basically a two-hander and kill 10 to 15 mobs 5 VR levels ahead of you. And it lasts about 20 seconds once you take the morph. You have to have this ability if you're playing Sorc. It's just too valuable, even if you are a healer. Probably the most interesting and fun ability is Bolt Escape. It's a teleport in front of you that stuns enemies for a brief time. And if you activate it within 4 seconds, it becomes more and more expensive to cast, so you can't recur casting this. I take the Streak morph because it deals a small amount of damage and stuns enemies in front of you. This morph is great because it does build a lot of ultimate, plowing through enemies over and over. So try Streak out, you'll love it. Alright, well that was the Sorc. What'd you think? Are there some skills that I'm missing or some morphs that you took that are different? Feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and give me some feedback because I've learned so much and I want to learn more about the Sorc and help tell the community about it. Thanks for watching.